The best light design is the stuff where you're sitting there going, wow, this scene's so good, it's getting so hot, it's like, I can't believe it. Well, you're not noticing that the light designer has put it on a long 3-4 minute cue where the lights have actually intensified with the scene. That's great light design. Light that aids the telling of the story. It's serving the story being told. It's appropriate to the piece in the presenting space. It's not just, look at this laser I shot across the place, or look at, I made it blue on stage. How many resources do they have? If you go to Hard Bargain Players, you're going to realize, look at the gorgeous lighting. And if you turn around, you kind of go, look, they have no lighting instruments. They've got like 12 cans. I'm exaggerating, but they got nothing. And yet they take that nothing and they shoot it through the leaves of their natural space, and they create all kinds of wonderful shadows and different looks and amazing light just with what they have. That's harder than going to a place that has scrolling gels where they can change the color every scene for every lighting instrument there is, and motorized lights that can actually follow spot without having a controller there. Takes a programmer, takes somebody who knows how to use that equipment correctly. I'm not saying score them down, but I'm asking you to realize that if you're seeing great light design in a space that has no resources whatsoever, that's harder to do and deserves a level of difficulty harder score. How much did the light do for you? If you're seeing Our Town, and it started out as a barren stage with some chairs, maybe a trellis off to the side, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, there's the road, and there's the first house, and there's the second house, and there's the gravesite, and there's the 2 windows where the kids are looking out across the way to each other. And it was all done with light. The light was the set. How much did the light have to do in this show? That's better light design than a general wash that had 4 cues. How many cues were there? How long were the cues? Did you notice that the light was fading correctly as you go into night, the entire night? Did the light change from east to west as the sun went over? How much subtle stuff did you not realize and pull back and kind of go, wow, they've got no front lighting? Port City Playhouse did that a few years ago with Betrayal. They won the award, and yet they had no front lighting. They had 2 pillars on the sides and downlight on stage, yet they made Betrayal. It looked different every scene. It was amazing. Well deserved. What were they able to achieve with the resources they had? How many looks did they create? Were there long, slow cues? I've already kind of talked about all these things. Or were the lights distracting? Was it gratuitous? It's up to you to kind of realize that. Did they use follow spots unobtrusively? One of the funny things we had at Elton Street several years ago was we got dinged by another company, another awards program, and said, by the way, your follow spot operators need training. I wanted to write back and say, no, my actors needed training because we had no follow spot operators. It was just actors moving into the one shadow we had on stage every time. And yet because we were doing it, moving them into spotlights that we had available, we get dinged because of that. Take a look back and say, you know what? Spotlight operators suck. Oh, there are no spotlights here. Oh, it must be the actors. Whose fault is that? Light designer for creating these giant shadows on stage, or the actor for not hitting their marks? Up to you. Sound design. If you would like to win the Sound Designer Watch currently, you just have to do the show Copenhagen because it requires 1 special effect. If you do it right, you get a Sound Design Award. At the end of Copenhagen, the nuclear blast goes off. Okay? I'm sorry I ruined it for you. If you don't know Copenhagen, I apologize. However, how hard is it really to do that? It's like it's a bomb effect. You can download the MP3 from the internet in a heartbeat, and then you string it together so it's real long it goes on for a minute or whatever the case may be, and then you put subwoofers under the seats, and you make them feel it in their butts. It's like, oh my God, I feel this explosion going off. If a light designer does his job right or her job right, the yellows become reds, and it's a glorious moment that lasts forever, and they're feeling it. It's like, oh, what a great, 10, great. It's 1 goddamn effect. That's it. That's it, 1 effect, and yet they get an award for it. I want this to go to Frankenstein at Hard Bargain Players, like it did several years ago, for underscoring an entire production of Frankenstein the play. Where you kind of go, I believed I was on the ocean because I felt the music doing that. And they underscored it beautifully. I couldn't believe it. I was listening to music the entire time, and it didn't distract from the show. It actually enhanced the show. If you go to see a show, we did a show called I can't remember the name. I can remember the name of the show. Anyways, 3 ladies who are planning to kill their husbands, so they're locked in the freezer in the basement. Yet they started out as a dinner scene. The men are supposed to be off stage having dinner and kind of putting around the dining room table. And those men are never seen on stage. And yet in our playbill, we listed the 3 ladies who are the mainstays of the show, and then the 3 guys who are off stage because they did the voices on tape. And yet judges gave each of them a score for acting off stage every night, when in truth, they were never there. And it was good sound design, making it sound like those guys were just off stage. Bad playbill editing, bad judging, because it should have been a higher score for this guy. Before we separated out plays from musicals, this had never gone to anybody who ran a wetboard. And yet, like food and props, the wetboard is the hard part. Running microphones without the number you need at a community theater level, you need 27 microphones for that cast, but you've only got 5. And so they're constantly swapping, and you have constantly turn them off as they go off stage so they can take their belt pack off and move the clip and hopefully not break anything and retape every time, whatever the case may be. That's the nightmare job. Trusting actors not to hurt the equipment so that the show can be heard in a space where you typically go and you can't hear anything. If you go to a cavernous space with terrible acoustics and you dread it every time, it's like, oh, I can't stand seeing musicals here because I never hear a word they say on stage. And for the first time you go and you're sitting there going, I hear every word on stage. And you give it a 5. No, that's a 7 or 8 or 9. Well, Todd, I heard a squelch and I heard when they hugged. It's like, no, you heard one squelch in a space where you normally hear nothing. St. Mark's Players is an evil place to do sound. It's a giant church, and the sound just bounces off all the walls. And yet, occasionally they get a sound designer which is like, wow, I heard every word of every song. And it wasn't overpowered by the orchestra. In some cases, you'll go as a watch judge to these theaters, and they'll give you the watch judge seat. Oh, watch judge, come right down here, please. And they get put right in front of the orchestra, and it's lovely, and you can see all the actors, and you can only hear the orchestra because they put you what we call in front of the speakers, which are now behind you, and so everybody else behind that point can hear the actors actually singing and dancing. You can hear just the orchestra in front of you. If you get that seat at intermission, maybe you could move to a better place that you actually hear what the sound designer was trying to get you to hear. Don't get wowed by the one special effect. Think about how many special effects were there. Not just how balanced it was, but also how hard was it to do with the sound design. Does the sound effect help enhance the piece? Does it create mood? Do they blend with the overall storytelling? The sound designers hate the last bullet point on this slide. Pre-show music, intermission music, post-show music do not count at all. At all. And sound designers screaming at me, Todd, do you realize how long it took me to come up with the ideas for this music that we picked? It was just perfect to get the audience in the mood of when this show is set and the kind of music that was playing, and it's Joplin or whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. If you go to the Kennedy Center, there's no music playing before the show. They don't want to pay the rights for it. Would it have been any different had there been no music? No. Yes, it may be nice to be able to walk into a theater and have some music playing, but it doesn't matter. To the show, it's curtain to curtain. That's all I care about. That's what you do. If you're sitting there, you're on your ballot, you're sitting going 7 or 7.5. It was very good. I liked it a lot. 7, 7.5, 7, 7. Okay, at that point, you can let the pre-show music sway you one way or the other. I don't care. At that point, it's like, okay, let that be the deciding factor. But otherwise, doesn't count. I don't care how great it was. It doesn't matter. It didn't help the story between the curtains. Costumes. Costumes usually goes to the right group. Typically, costumes goes to shows that have pretty difficult costumes. A cast of 40 who have to change 3 times, all the costumes have to be coordinated really well, and it just looks right. And yet, we have a bunch of judges who think, you know what, they really seem to know costumes, and they kind of go, oh, the lead actress's shoes aren't period. Look at those, they're terrible. And they give a 4 to a show with a cast of 40, and they had incredible costumes on stage because one pair of shoes was wrong. Stop that. Taking it, that's a grain of salt. Maybe they were the right shoes for the dancing she had to do. And realize that, you can't find good dance shoes that are also 1940s boots. You know. How hard was it? If you're, again, look to your playbill for ideas. If it says costume coordinator, ooh, big clue, not costume designer, costume coordinator, and it says the cast, well, that's a 5, because they walked to their closets and brought in all their clothes and said, hey, director, which one do you think looks best as this character? There was no costume design. It was just a matter of what clothes do that character want to wear today. Yeah. If you go to see Beauty and the Beast, and it doesn't have a big thank you to Disney for the rental of costumes, and it says Belle's dresses built by this person, Lady in the Cabinet built by this person, Kid in the Cup and the Cart built by this person, you know, and the Beast built by these 3 people, that's a much harder show to do. For a long time, you know, no companies could rent, I'm not sure they were available for rent, those costumes for that show. So all that stuff had to be built for every show. If you go see 1776, anywhere in the area, you're going to walk in and kind of go, holy cow, look at those 27 perfectly coiffed colonial statesmen. It's amazing. I can't believe it. 10, amazing. And you go to the next community theater production of 1776 and you kind of go, holy cow, look at those. Wait a second. It's the same costumes. They've been floating around the area for like 80 years now. And they're always the same. Every costume designer knows where they are. They're at Reston and they're at LTA and there's a couple other places. And every costume designer builds one more for the fat guy or the short guy that they couldn't put in any of those costumes. Okay? The first time you're going to give it a 10, the second time you're going to go, wait a second, Todd told me about this. He was right. I've seen all those costumes before. If you know that, score it appropriately. Okay. Makeup design always goes to shows with kids and aliens. Because look, I can see makeup. Isn't it cute that Kid in Seussical is orange? Or look, the Mikado, I can see white face and the eyes look right and the lips have paint on them. Stop it. Please stop it. It didn't matter if that kid was orange or purple. Yes, he's cute. He was going to be cute without makeup. All right? I want this to go to a makeup designer who actually had to work at designing it. Someone who said, you know what, I've got an 18-year-old playing a 70-year-old, and my audience is 4 feet in front of me, and I need to make them look 70 without latex, because we can't afford latex. So I got to put lines on their face, shadows and highlights, and try to make them look wrinkly and old. And you're going to sit in the front row and kind of go, oh, I'm 4 feet from this person. I can tell they're 18 because I can see every line on their face that they've been drawn on. Well, maybe it looks better from the back row. And yet somebody had to look at their face and kind of go, okay, how do I make this person look the right age? What their heredity was, their environment, their occupation, their race. I want the hearth qualities to play more than here's purple paint every night, put it on your face, and walk out on stage. Here's the clown white for Mikado. Please put this on, make your eyes do the right thing, and do your lips. That's not that hard. The Mikado is not a hard play to do makeup on. I want the guy who you thought was a tremendous actor, who laid in the bed the entire night during Whose Life Is It Anyway, and died throughout the entire play, just got sicker and sicker and sicker. And you're going, I can't believe it. He was amazing. He looked sicker and sicker and sicker every scene because he was getting ashen. You thought the blood was draining from his face. You thought he was getting sweaty. No, it's great makeup design. If you don't notice it, that's the best stuff. Because every time that the lights went out, that person got the makeup applied to them and more stipple in their beard and red underneath their eyes and sweat was applied to them. If you go see Cyrano at the community theater level, I haven't seen it yet, but eventually someone will do Cyrano, and if the nose only falls off once, that's great set design. It's a great makeup design, because we don't do latex. Nobody does latex at the community theater level. We can't afford it, and nobody has the time and energy to learn it. But if that nose actually stays on and it looks right for at least a couple scenes, give them a 9 at least for having to do the frickin' nose. That's the harder makeup design. And yet, we continue to reward aliens and children. Not that, there is design there, but again, if a kid could be taught to put their own makeup on after one night, that wasn't hard to do. Hair design's the same way. You're going to walk in and kind of go, oh, look at that wig. Oh, it's horrible. It looks like something you got at a $10 5 and dime, for Halloween. It is. We can't afford $1,000 wigs on our budgets. We can't. I went to a production of Les Miserables down at Signature Theater, and I walked in and go, holy cow, look at all the hair on stage. And I stayed around to see a friend afterwards, and everybody came out from the cast, and not one of them had the hair I saw on stage. Every one of them was wearing a $1,000 wig. And you know why? To hide their microphones. They hid all the microphones in the wigs. They had to wear a wig in order to hide the microphones. And the wigs were gorgeous. And the hair, I swear to God, all the hair looked real. It's gorgeous. And yet every time I go to community theater shows, I kind of go, oh, wig, wig. And I want you to go, you know what? Wig. Good job. Somebody had to set that wig every night, pin it up, make it look right, spray it, get there early, stay late, to make sure that wig stayed as good as possible on no budget. Doing wigs is much harder than saying, here kid, dippity-doo, spread it in your hair and make it do this tonight, or that, or this. That's not hard. The kid can do it themselves. And yet look, funny kids with funny hair. 10. No. Wigs. Wigs are much harder. If you go to 7636, I want you to judge the entire hair design based on the first scene. Because you're going to walk in and kind of, oh, look, 26 guys sitting there in perfectly coiffed colonial wigs, all perfectly powdered and all looking great. And every one of those guys, as soon as they leave that first song, they're going to walk off stage and kind of go, ugh, and have a smoke or whatever they do, and they're going to come back on. It's like, oh my God, oh, here, I'm ready now. And it's going to look all wrong, the second scene. I want you to judge that show and all the wigs on the first scene. If you walk into same time next year, and you can tell what year it is based on the lady's wig. It's like when Harry Met Sally. You knew that it was the Cheryl Tiegs year or the Dorothy Hamill year or whatever the case may be in that movie because every time Meg Ryan appeared on screen, her hair was right for that year. Same time next year is the same way. You're going to walk in and kind of go, oh, that's an ugly-ass wig, but it's right for that period. Good job, good job, good job. Harder to do than would you style your hair this way. I went and saw a production recently at Laurelville Playhouse. And I couldn't believe what I saw. I walked in, it was like Lieutenant of Inishmore or something, and the girl on stage had a short little pixie haircut, and I couldn't believe that wasn't her hair. And yet at intermission, I looked at the wall of pictures on the wall, and the actress in the pictures, there's only one girl in it, had long hair. I couldn't even tell it was her. It's like, is that the same girl? And so I turned around, because you can turn around, if you've never been to Laurelville Playhouse, it's a very small space. I turned around to the concessionaire behind me and I said, is that the girl on stage? He says, yep. I said, is she wearing a wig? He says, I don't know. He didn't know. He went and found out, yes, she was wearing a wig. The best wig I've ever seen at community theater level. Guess what was missing from the playbill? Hair design. Best wig I've ever seen. And after intermission, I realized, oh yeah, that kind of is a wig. But I completely bought it for the first show, for the first act. It was amazing. And yet nobody's going to get credit for it because the judges probably would have overlooked it because they didn't know it was a wig. Because it wasn't in the playbill, and it looked so good. You have to find out what's on stage and what may have been missed in the playbills. Special effects, everything else. Special effects are defined as any effect or thing that required somebody that's not normally part of our production teams to design it, build it, or run it every night. Pyro. Most of us can't do pyro in our companies anymore, but if there's pyro on stage, somebody had to make that happen and make it safe every night. Multimedia. Computer graphics, slides, movies, whatever the case may be, requires somebody to do all that stuff and make it work every night. Okay? Rain or water. None of our stages have an available faucet right there handy. Somebody has to run a hose from somewhere in the building all the way down to the stage and get that thing to run every night or make that rain happen.